All right, when it comes to light and shadow, light, the direction the light moves creates the direction the shadow will move. So in this example, I'm going to do 4 different light sources and how the shadow will be affected by it. We're going to add shadow on the object and casting from the object onto the ground. All right, so the first example is going to be where the light source is going to be to the left and slightly behind the object. Okay. The light tends to move down and around in a radial direction, kind of like this. So the light that's going to hit the object, it's going to hit the left side of the object, casting shadow on the right side. So the object is blocking the light, which is hitting it on the left, and when it blocks that light, it's going to cast shadow on the right. So I'm going to add shadow on the right side of the bee. This is not 3-dimensional, but I'll do the 3-dimensional example. When you're doing shadows, you want to start soft and then build to darker values. The closer the shadow is to the lighter the shadow will be. And the further away the shadow is, for instance, it'll be right at the edge of this shape, the darker the shadow will be. So that's why we want to build. Also, because the shadow is behind the shape, remember it's kind of like works like opposites. If the light is hitting the back of the shape, shadow is casting on the front of the shape. So I'm going to lightly, now if it's directly behind the object, you'll get a silhouette, which is a very dark shadow. And also I'm just gonna lightly shade the front and add a little bit of shadow on this side where the shadow would cast. And when it comes to the hole of the bee, light is coming through the hole, so the right side of the hole will actually have light, and the left side of the hole is where the shadow will cast, especially if the object is 3-dimensional. Sometimes you might even see a little highlight right on this right side where the light would hit it. There we go. When it comes to the shadow casting on the ground, the shadow starts at the bottom of the shape, always starts at the bottom, unless the shape is floating, then it will be kind of floating below. But it starts at the bottom of the shape, the direction the light moves. So if my light is moving from left side to diagonally to the right, so will my shadow move in the same direction from casting on the ground. So you can see the arrow in the direction the light is moving. That's going to be the same direction the shadow is moving. It's going to start from the bottom of the shape, and it's going to mirror the shape. So I like to work from top to bottom. I like to show the side and work from, sometimes I'll even shade a little bit as I go. When I'm doing shadows, I like to start from the bottom and then start working upward towards the shape. And also because it's at a diagonal, it's most likely going to have a little bit of a warp shape. Oop, forgot the holes. Don't forget the holes. That's where light is coming through. It's the one part of the shadow where you actually would see the light casting with it, so you want to keep it. And the same rule, start soft. The top is going to be probably the softest because it's the furthest away from the light source. So if you get too dark, just use your eraser to lightly soften up the value. And underneath the object is going to be the darkest value. So I'm going to do a little bit more shading and build up that value under my object. Just like that. All right, for the next one, we're going to do where the light source is right above the object. Just like that. When our object is up above, it's going to hit the top. It's going to hit the bottom of the O, the bottom of this O, and shadow is going to cast at the bottom of the shape. Because it is a little bit in front of it, because it's right above it, you are going to have a little bit more, oops, nope, wrong spot. It's going to be under the curve, like that, just a little hint under the curve. And I'm going to add a little bit of shadow at the bottom here too. Just building up those values. And then shadow, because the light is hitting from the top, it's going to be blocked right here, and we're going to see light here. So I'm going to add some shadow up on top, because if part of this is bubbling out, then this is going to cast a shadow right there. All right. And then for the cast shadow, because it's right above it, that means that the shadow is going to be shorter. When we have a light source that's low, let's say the horizon line sits right about here, is a little lower, the shadow tends to get longer. If the light is higher, our shadows tend to get smaller. So I'm just going to show the shadow sitting right underneath the shape. Same rule applies. As it gets closer to the shape, it's going to get a little darker. Oops. Okay, our next light source is going to come from the right in back, which means it's moving towards the left like that. That means our shadow is also going to move towards the left. It's a little closer to the horizon line, so we're going to have a long shadow. It's going to hit, light is going to hit the right of our shape, casting shadow on the left of our shape. So I'm going to show, and it is behind my shape, so I'm going to add a soft value to the front as well, because there is a little bit of shadow on the front of our object because our light is behind it. And I'm going to keep building up those darker values using hatching and also some short lines and tall lines, being nice and soft and building up my layers rather than pushing so hard necessarily. Okay, light is going to hit the left side of the hole and shadow is going to cast on the right side of the hole because of the way the shape is bending and the way the light hits it. Just like that. All right, going to now build my cast shadow. Remember, I like to move from the bottom out. So that's how I'm going to do that. So I'll do a little bit, maybe like that, and show the mirrored shape. Get those. I'm going to do a light layer of shading first. Gets darker closer to the shape. So I'm going to do some harder, darker shadows from the bottom out. All right, for the last example, instead of the light source being behind the shape, the light source is going to be in front of the shape. And it is also going to go back in, the light is moving back and in front. So I'm going to put it right about here, maybe right about here. If we imagine light source is like sitting right here. And same rule is going to apply, the direction of the light. So we're hitting the right side of our object. So shadow is going to cast just a little bit on the left side. And because the light is hitting the front of the shape, it's going to have more light on it. Ziki, no. No. And this time, our light's going to hit the left side and cast a little bit on the right instead. And the cast shadow is where things get look a lot different. I'm going to just do a little bit here, just a hair. Probably the top edge of the bee. Okay. And this time, the shadow is going to go behind our shape, and it's going to cast, again, moving the same direction, but when it goes behind, it no longer mirrors, and it actually will have more of the shape, and it's going to show a little bit of overlapping, and as it goes back in space, it's going to get a little bit smaller, because things that go back in space get smaller, things that come forward tend to get larger. I'm going to do a little more shading here. Just a little bit. Now, one thing that really helps you practice, you can draw 4 Bs like I did here and do each one of these practice with me. The other thing that you could do is you could take some objects, take it outside, place it in the sun, grab your sketchbook and draw. And look at it from different angles so that you can see how the light affects it from different sides. I will tell you probably the most important tool and most important way to practice your drawing skills is from drawing from what you see, from observation. It'd be great if you could practice this as well. Maybe I will draw up some bees and scan them in. I will try and scan this and add it to the guide so you can just at least take a look at it. But honestly, guys, taking it outside, putting it in the sun, drawing it in real life is your best way of practicing light and shadow. When you finish practicing, you're going to take out your word design, your 3D word, or just your bubble word or block word, whichever way you drew it, and add some shadows to it. I'm going to be back and I'll be bringing my example and doing the shading on my example to show you how I did it. All right, so I am going to do my objects, the light source. I think that I'm going to have it in front and kind of slightly in back and behind. So somewhere like this, coming like that. Okay, so that means the sides of my H is going to have a lot of shadow on them because it is being partially blocked by the light. All right, so I'm going to start by shading the side. Now, if the light source was on this side, then actually the side would have very little shadow. But because I'm putting the light source, now I'm also making that decision to put the light source on the left because I would prefer to have shadow on the side anyway. So that is sort of I'm kind of planning for that because I think it would help with making the letters look a little more interesting with the shadow on the side. So I'm taking my time. I can also, because I have the light source coming from the side as well, casting shadow on the front of my letter, I can create a slightly lighter value. Now I would do my side darker because there's less light and compared to my front. So I would shade the front a little bit lighter than my side because of the way the light sits. But at least this would imply that the light is more behind the shape than in front of the shape. Of course, if you want the light to be in front, that's fine. You can put the shadow behind the objects. I'll do one letter. By the way, you can also do this with colored pencils. If you want this to be, instead of just using gray pencil, if you want to have fun with color and do some color instead with light and shadow, yeah, go for it. All right, gonna do the cast shadow because it's going in this direction, so is my shadow. Sometimes what I like to do is I like to take the corners and draw the diagonal lines first so I know where they're placed. And then this side's going to be a little longer, and then this is going to be horizontal. We're going to keep that horizontal. It's going to be slightly warped because of the way that we're drawing the shape and the way it would look if it was casting. Almost a little bit of cast overlapping with the two shapes. All right, I'm going to do some shading at the bottom. Remember, start light, build to dark. I'm going to actually make right at the edge a little darker so it stands out. You can see I'm thinking about value and how value is very helpful. There we go. It's looking pretty good. And I would do the same for each one. The only difference is because the light source is getting further away, when you go to draw the line, you want to imagine this is a point. It's kind of like one point perspective, where if you have a point and you have a straight edge and you want to do your shadow, you're going to line up that edge. So there's that part, and the back of my letter is going to be right here, and it's going to slightly overlap. So see, so it does kind of work like one point perspective. If you want to practice, or if you just want to go by the general rule of the direction, if the light is moving to the right, then the shadow is moving to the right, you can do that as well, or you can try and use that one point perspective technique. All right, I'm going to stop here, and I'm going to do a little more work on this, and then I'll come back and show you the final. All right, here I am back with my finished hope word, three-dimensional hope with cast shadows. And you can see I kind of showed you some of the reference up here. I'm kind of using this example right here. I created a point with an arrow with a paper behind it. You can draw it very lightly on your own paper. And then you can see the direction the light moves is the same direction that the cast shadows move. And you can notice also that the light hits the left side of my letter, casting more shadow on the right side as well as the front, because the way I'm looking at the light source is a little bit behind my shapes. So I kind of want to show a little bit of shadow on the front because my light source is behind my shape. All right, guys, I would love to see if any of you give this a try. If you do, please take a photo and share it on your, share it with me. I would love to see it. And I hope you like it, and I hope you have fun experimenting. Remember what I said, try and do those practices first. After you do your letters, maybe go outside, take an object, draw what you see in your sketchbook to help practice cast shadows, which is extremely helpful. And then if you feel ready, then add some cast shadows to your own drawing. Also, I'm using mainly pencil because it can erase well, but you can also use different colored pencils to create a similar effect, but in color. Whatever you do, like I said, share it with me. I want to see it. All right, guys, I'll make sure everything is linked up, and I hope you have fun, and I'll see you next time. Bye.